Good afternoon. You're watching i24 News. According to Palestinian reports, Hamas leader in Gaza, Ismail Haniyeh, says a truce agreement with Israel is imminent, with both Egypt and the Palestinian Authority set to make a simultaneous announcement this evening. In the meantime, however, the fighting on the ground continues, with both sides striking the other. I'm joined now in the studio by i24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev. Tal, it seems we've grown accustomed to the fact that the Israeli side doesn't respond. Why is that?
Well, Netanyahu's communication team has decided that this is the strategy to work upon with these ongoing repeated ceasefire announcements. It's been under a lot of criticism, especially from the Israeli press, but also from Israeli cabinet ministers who have complained that they have learned of previous ceasefire deals from the media and not from the prime minister himself. There's quiet among the cabinet ministers too. It may be well that they are now being updated by phone by the prime minister or people in his office calling up and to update them on the deal. But as you mentioned, there are increasing reports that we're getting closer to understandings, and we're waiting to 7 o'clock when reportedly both the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and the Egyptian Foreign Ministry will announce a ceasefire. And Israel, again, has not yet confirmed, but Israel has been going along with the Egyptian initiative all along the way and has accepted accepted all of the Egyptian ceasefire proposals, and even the basic outline, which has stayed the same from reports we're getting from the Palestinian side. The formula on the table is one of this, a month of a timeout of hostilities and an immediate easing of the blockade, meaning some of the border crossings will be opened immediately and the fishing zone for the Gaza Strip will be expanded, but and other more complex issues will be delayed for another month, be discussed only in another month. Egypt will summon both sides again to negotiations, and according to Palestinian sources, these three issues that will be discussed later on is 1, seaport, 2, airport, and 3, the Palestinian demand from Israel to release the prisoners that were captured after the Operation Brother's Keeper to find the 3 abducted teenagers. Again, Israel has not yet responded, and we are waiting to 7 o'clock in the evening to Palestinian Authority Mahmoud Abbas' speech, in which he will also is expected to present a surprise, a diplomatic initiative surprise, which according to Palestinian reports is actually another UN initiative. According to reports, we might expect Abbas to actually announce an unlimited ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire, but also to threaten that he's going back to the UN Security Council to ask for a date and a deadline for Israeli withdrawal from the 1967 to the 1967 lines, and to threaten that if that doesn't happen, he will go to the ICC, to the International Criminal Court, and try Israel for war crimes.
Well, Tal, very briefly, what can we expect, though, from the Israeli cabinet this time?
Well, Netanyahu will have a very difficult time, especially we still have to wait and see what are the details of the proposal and what is the exact formula that has been agreed upon. But Netanyahu will have a difficult time because many in his security cabinet will be very critical of the fact that Hamas gets any achievements out of this ceasefire proposal. But Netanyahu, according to what we are seeing, this proposal is very similar to both the November 2012 understandings and both to the proposal that was on the table 40 days ago, meaning that Hamas has suffered a big damage but basically has not achieved much more.
Tal Shalev, i24 News diplomatic correspondent, thank you very much for this. Now, since midnight, some 100 rockets have been fired from Gaza into southern and central Israel as the conflict drags on into its 50th day. Earlier, 20 people were lightly injured in Ashkelon when a missile struck a house in the city. And a couple of hours ago, a rocket landed in an empty kindergarten courtyard. At the same time, the Israel Air Force continues its strikes on Gaza, with Palestinian sources reporting at least 6 people killed today. And U.S. General John Allen is currently in Israel. Earlier, I discussed his visit with Haaretz government and military analyst Amir Oren.
General Allen was appointed more than a year ago by both Secretary of Defense Hagel and Secretary of State Kerry as the U.S. representative mostly to the West Bank, to the Palestinian Authority, with the idea of devising some security outline for a potential Israeli withdrawal once peace ensues. This was not very successful because while the Israeli military could come up with a similar plan to the American one, The Israeli political echelon refused to accept it, especially as it had to do with the Jordan Valley. But this was many months ago and part of the Secretary Kerry mission. Now, with Gaza back in the picture and perhaps Mahmoud Abbas in a role there, if not in control, perhaps John Allen will have to devise some security strategy for Gaza too, because there are 6 or 7 American-trained battalions of Palestinian Authority troops, and a couple of them could be deployed to the Rafah crossing and perhaps even along the Gaza-Israeli border.
Well, despite talk of an imminent ceasefire, the fighting continues. i24 News' Shai Ben-Ari is stationed along the Israel-Gaza border and filed this report.
We're basically, the last update that we received is air raid sirens going off in Kerem Shalom and Nachal Oz, other communities not far from here. What we could witness with our own eyes about half an hour ago, this was already after that we had received updates of a possible impending ceasefire. We witnessed a rocket being launched behind us. So the situation continues, and even if we are indeed approaching a new ceasefire, that does not necessarily mean the situation will calm down immediately. At least we often see when we know that a conflict is coming towards the end, often the inclination is to actually increase fire to sort of improve positions ahead of any sort of negotiation phase. That's the way it often works in the Middle East. Unfortunately, and that may be the case today, we'll have to see exactly. For the time being, it has not calmed down entirely.
And to other news, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko is due to take part in talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin at a summit in Minsk, capital of Belarus. The meeting comes amid rising tension between the two countries over Ukraine's military campaign against pro-Russian separatists, with several Russian soldiers recently captured. i24 News reporter Danny Swibel filed this story.
10 Russian servicemen were captured by Ukraine as Ukrainian troops on Monday kept watch over an area in the east, which sits between two of the last pro-Russian rebel stronghold cities. With the rebels largely encircled in Donetsk and Luhansk, Ukraine has been pressing its advance, while its Western allies have waited nervously to see if Moscow will intervene in order to prevent the separatists from being crushed.
If separatists break through, if they break through the offensive by our troops, they may appear here. That is why we are strategically a very important target here, so they will not be able to pass by our divisions.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko made the decision to dissolve Ukraine's parliament and announced an election on October 26th in a country that is fighting a war against separatists that has driven relations with Russia to an all-time low.
Today's composition of the parliament has been a pillar for Yanukovych for a year and a half. Most of these deputies adopted dictators' laws which took the lives of the Heavenly Hundred. They must bear responsibility for this, both criminal and political. A lot of deputies who attend or do not attend parliament sessions are either direct sponsors and accomplices or supporters of rebels and terrorists.
Poroshenko and Russian leader Vladimir Putin are under pressure to defuse the crisis when they meet for the first time in months, alongside top EU officials, along with the US, who have imposed sanctions on Russia for failing to rein in the separatists.
And back to the Middle East, the United States is preparing to send spy planes into Syria to track Islamic State jihadists whose advances have sparked global concern and American airstrikes in neighboring Iraq. A U.S. official confirmed the plans after Syria said it was willing to work with the international community to tackle extremists. American officials said, however, that they do not plan to ask Damascus for permission for the flights. And a Jewish center in Mumbai reopened on Tuesday, nearly 6 years after gunmen stormed the building and killed 6 people, including Rabbi Gavriel Noah Holtzberg and his wife Rivka. Rabbis from across Asia celebrated the reopening of Nariman House, which was targeted in 2008 in a series of deadly attacks on the city. That's all the time we have for now. Join us back here in 20 minutes. You can also find us on i24news.tv and our Facebook and Twitter pages. I'm Shachar Peled. Thank you for watching.